What if I told you there was a film that starred modern cinematic legends George Clooney and Brad Pitt that came out just last year? What if I told you that same film was written and directed by Jon Watts, the filmmaker behind the cult indie darling Cop Car, the Marvel Cinematic Universe's billion-dollar earning Spider-Man Homecoming trilogy, and the man who's currently killing it on streaming with the better than it has any right to be Star Wars Skeleton Crew? What if I told you that film, which was meant to be released theatrically, changed course at the last second and was dumped on a, statistically speaking, third-rate streaming service after only 1 week in theaters? Would you believe me? Well, you should, because that film unfortunately does exist. It's called Wolfs, and its severe mishandling didn't come at the hands of a traditional film studio, but rather the tech giant Apple, the smartphone manufacturer turned entertainment company who only got into the film space a mere 5 years ago with the launch of Apple TV+. While Apple TV Plus has generated a decent chunk of quality content in its short lifespan, shows like Severance, Shrinking, and of course Ted Lasso, I think it's safe to say that, given its relatively small market share in the streaming space, ranking in 8th place behind Peacock with a mere 25 million subscribers, the platform is not one that can solely support a mainstream cinematic release. Despite that fact, that didn't stop Apple from taking Watts' latest, a slick crime comedy about rival black market fixers attempting to cover up a politician's misdeeds, and dumping it there with little to no promotion. Apple's decision to ditch the film on its platform came late in the game, and was due to the disastrous performance of its 2 other wide-release films earlier in the year. The Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum-led romantic comedy Fly Me to the Moon, and Matthew Vaughn's goofy and indulgent Kingsman stealth sequel Argyle, both of which boasted budgets in the $100 million to $200 million range, but only earned a fraction of their budgets back. Fearing a similar fate for Wolfs, Apple pivoted to its aforementioned strategy, a 1-week theatrical release and a quick exit to streaming. But they did so only after prematurely announcing a sequel and before telling creator Jon Watts. Watts, ever the professional, remained quiet about the insult throughout the film's short promotional run, but made his displeasure known after Apple announced the hypothetical second film's cancellation a short time later, making it clear that the megacorporation hadn't canceled the sequel. He had. I showed Apple my final cut of Wolfs early this year. They were extremely enthusiastic about it and immediately commissioned me to start writing a sequel. But their last-minute shift from a promised wide theatrical release to a streaming-only release was a total surprise and made without any explanation or discussion. I wasn't even told about it until less than a week before they announced it to the world. I was completely shocked and asked them to please not include the news that I was writing a sequel. They ignored my request and announced it in their press release anyway, seemingly to create a positive spin to their streaming pivot. And so I quietly returned the money they gave me for the sequel. I didn't want to talk about it because I was proud of the film and didn't want to generate any unnecessary negative press. I loved working with Brad and George and would happily do it again, but the truth is that Apple didn't cancel the Wolfs sequel. I did, because I no longer trusted them as a creative partner. The drama surrounding Apple, Watts, and Wolfs is part of a trend that seems to be occurring more and more, both as streaming continues to dominate and as tech companies continue to invade the entertainment space. In fact, the Watts situation directly mirrors the war between eccentric filmmaker Doug Liman and mega merchant Amazon over the release of his Jake Gyllenhaal starring remake of Roadhouse even earlier in the year. Months before Roadhouse made its streaming exclusive debut on Amazon's platform, Prime Video, Liman released an op-ed with major entertainment trade Deadline, slamming Amazon by claiming that MGM, the iconic yet struggling film studio that Amazon acquired for $8.5 billion, promised him a theatrical release and that the new company was intentionally attempting to undermine movie theaters in order to drive more people to their platform. Amazon asked me and the film community to trust them and their public statements about supporting cinemas, and then they turned around and are using Roadhouse to sell plumbing fixtures. Amazon will sell more toasters if it has more subscribers. It will have more subscribers if it doesn't have to compete with movie theaters. The feud between Liman and Amazon reached such a fever pitch that the filmmaker behind classics like Go, The Bourne Identity, and Edge of Tomorrow pledged to boycott the premiere of his own film at the South by Southwest Film Festival, a promise he immediately went back on when it became clear that Amazon wasn't going to budge.
Doug, why are you going to South by South? What happened to your boycott? The whole point of this video is because you're boycotting your own movie. Why are you going to... Why did you relent?
You know, it's tough to do, but sometimes you just have to acknowledge that you lost.
Lyman, clearly not necessarily a man of conviction, turned out to not be the most truthful either. Not long after his op-ed, his star, Jake Gyllenhaal, set the record straight in an interview with Total Film, claiming that Amazon never intended Roadhouse to be a theatrical release. I adore Doug's tenacity, and I think he is advocating for filmmakers and film in the cinema and theatrical releases, but I mean, Amazon was always clear that it was streaming. Gyllenhaal's statement is corroborated by sources close to the production that state that Lyman and problematic producer Joel Silver, a man who was allegedly fired off of the film by head of Amazon Studios Jennifer Salke for abusive behavior, was offered a choice by Amazon during negotiations: a relatively small $60 million budget with a theatrical release, or a larger $85 million budget with a streaming-only release. Taking that into account, as well as the press release that both Lyman and Silver signed naming the film as streaming-only, it would seem that Lyman negotiated for the larger budget under the assumption that he'd be able to shame Amazon into a theatrical release after the fact, apparently not taking into account the fact that Jeff Bezos has no shame.
Is you shooting up
Oh my God.
Give me this champagne bottle. Come here. I want one. I want to hear this. Here. You want a little of this? Okay. Oh my God.
While it looks like Lyman lied through his teeth in regards to this particular issue, the fact that there was an issue at all speaks to the problematic nature of tech companies shepherding art in the first place. Like Apple, Amazon has released its fair share of quality films and television, but they've also mishandled their fair share too. And it would seem that they're currently mishandling MGM's biggest property, the James Bond franchise. As I touched on in my last video, in the nearly 3 years that Amazon has owned MGM, we've seen no movement on the next installment. I previously speculated that this was because Eon Productions, the company that co-owns the James Bond film rights, was struggling to figure out where to take the series after ending Daniel Craig's run in spectacular fashion. But if a recent article from the Wall Street Journal is to be believed, the delay stems from drama between Eon's head Barbara Broccoli and Amazon rather than a lack of a creative direction. In the article, it stated that Barbara, who's overseen the Bond franchise since she inherited it from her father, Albert Cubby Broccoli, 30 years ago, had reservations about MGM's sale to Amazon in the first place, but didn't want to complicate the deal for the company that had served as her long-term partner. Considering that she and her stepbrother, Michael G. Wilson, would retain creative control anyway, Barbara took a back seat as the deal was being done. Unfortunately, it would seem that her reservations proved valid almost immediately. Prime Video head Mike Hopkins assigned former NBC Universal executive Jennifer Salke, the same woman who allegedly fired Joel Silver off of Roadhouse, to serve as the liaison between Amazon and Barbara. Reportedly, Salke got off on a bad foot by referring to the James Bond franchise, Barbara Broccoli's family business, as quote-unquote content, a buzzy corporate term that has been diminishing the work of artists the world over for several years now, and one that Barbara no doubt accurately felt undermined the prestige of the greatest, longest-running cinematic spy franchise of all time. It would seem that this flippant attitude toward MGM's crown jewel, as well as Amazon's cold reliance on algorithms rather than artistic instincts, has alienated Broccoli to the point that she and Amazon's relationship has completely collapsed. Broccoli has reportedly been pitched several ideas for spin-offs, reboots, and reimaginings, but has shut down all of them save for the sleeping pill of a reality show, 007 Road to a Million, a boring Amazing Race ripoff that I also touched on in my last video. You should maybe go watch that one. YouTube stops promoting my stuff after the initial wave of views for some reason. Anyway, according to friends close to the producer, the disconnect with Amazon led Broccoli to uncharacteristically exclaim, "These people are f***ing idiots." Though I personally don't disagree with Miss Broccoli's assessment, I don't think the root of the issues between these tech companies and the creative community is one of idiocy, but rather one of disrespect. Rather than an exception, Jennifer Salke's view of art as content seems to be the rule when it comes to tech companies like Apple and Amazon. The major concern of a traditional film studio is to generate the best films possible, or at least the most profitable films possible, in order to keep their businesses going. But the main concern of companies like Apple and Amazon is to generate the most content possible to gain the most subscribers who they can then in turn sell products to. For Amazon, that means drawing subscribers to their archaic website so they can sell them that toaster Doug Lyman mentioned, while attempting to figure out which movies and shows actually come with their Prime subscription versus the ones that also require a Starz subscription linked to their Prime subscription, which is just confusing. By the way, who's still watching Starz? They've always been a second-rate Cinemax. I mean Cinemax. And for Apple, that means flaunting their new iPhone by having Brett Goldstein's suicidal shrinking character use it to text the daughter of the woman he accidentally unalived before attempting to unalive himself. Spoilers. This devaluation of art wouldn't be so bad if it was relegated to Apple and Amazon alone, but their influence on more traditional studios, as well as the general push towards streaming over cinemas, is part of a much larger problem. The rise of these companies in the entertainment space has made the work of many creatives disposable. Artists behind worldwide phenomena are paid a flat rate and receive no residuals. Entire big-budget films are shelved in order to be used as tax write-offs, and animation is disrespected to the point that it either receives the same treatment and gets shelved, like the John Cena Will Forte live-action animated mashup Coyote vs. Acme, or is arbitrarily sold to a rival streaming service like the excellent and criminally underseen spiritual successor to the greatest animated series of all time, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Caped Crusader. Seriously though, why do I have to go to Amazon to watch this, but WB's other animation is available on Max? A company mistreating its employees and partners is nothing new in the world of business, but companies mistreating partners as high profile as the steward of the James Bond franchise or a director responsible for the 7th highest grossing film of all time is. Unfortunately, as long as companies like Apple and Amazon are successful enough in their primary businesses to treat entertainment as a prestigious, fun side project, it's likely that we'll continue to see many more wolves in the near future and far fewer Bond films. Let me know what you think about Apple and Amazon's influence on cinema down in the comments section below. Like me, do you think these companies have a negative influence on film, or do you think the positives outweigh a few scrapped movies and delayed franchises? Let me know. I'd also like to ask that if you liked this video, please click the like button, press subscribe, ring the bell, and share it with a friend. I'd like to say thanks in advance. Thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.